Let go of control and all my troubles go away. Meditating every day until the shadow is revealed. Unconditional love permeating my field. I let go and let God. Why not? She's got it. I let go and let God.
Living Well into Old Age is the name of this podcast number 5. What's it mean to you, Randall, to live well into old age?
I think about it, I start thinking about playing baseball or a sport or running with my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And it just means that I'm vital, I'm active, I'm not, sitting around sedentary, can't move, can't travel because I have an ailment or for whatever reason. And so I want to be able to, I want to be able to live, I want to be able to run into my 90s. You know what I mean? That's what I think about when I hear it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. You see the videos, but it's crazy to say out loud.
Yeah. Anytime I see a very, just an elderly person, 60s, 70s out running, it just gets me so jacked up.
Oh, yeah.
Driving down the road, I want to just yell at them and go, let's go.
Yeah, same.
So, yeah, I mean, because we're not, as a society, we're not living well into old age right now. And you even break that down into our children now. I think our children have 50 or 60% of our children have a chronic disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so 76.4% of society has at least one chronic disease, and 51% of society has multiple, which is just incredible of our society. And those include, so there's a list of things. So you either have heart disease, cancer, lung disease, diabetes, strokes, arthritis, chronic kidney disease, hypertension, obesity, and mental health disorders are included in here, and Alzheimer's. So between those diseases, which are all very serious diseases, so if you have any of them, you're probably struggling.
Autoimmune, are those in there too?
I didn't see.
Was that like a stack rank list of top?
This was just like what they, I think CDC, because this is all from the CDC of what they included in there for that 76.4% and the 51%. So, I mean, just living with diabetes, if you know anyone with diabetes, or just living with arthritis or having cancer, obviously, or having heart disease and you're getting in stents and all the, all these meds, usually it comes with a lot of meds. So you're on one, and then if you're on two, then you're just on a litany of meds to try and take care of these issues. And then the meds come with their own symptoms, and which lead you to put on other meds. I think our grandmother is on, she's 85 now, but she's on just an insane amount of meds.
Yeah.
And I remember when you and I looked into it, it was like they put her on this one med, and then that caused these certain effects, which then they started putting her on these other meds.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because it's the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
And they put it on these other meds to compensate for that med causing this other issue. And then it was kind of just a water down effect from there. And I think she was on, and there still is, like 15 to 20 meds per day, which is absurd.
Well, let me ask you this, like, how do we live well into old age? Like, what does that mean to you, like, preparing now?
I think the obvious one, I think you just got to think about things that you're doing daily and how can you improve your life and the things that you do daily. And one of the things we do most in our lives is we eat. We eat and we drink water. So if you're thinking of the two most things we do as a society, we're eating all day and we're thinking about food all day. And and we're drinking water or some sort of liquid all day to hydrate our, and then movement as well, right?
Mhm.
And we talked a lot about that in our first podcast when talking about building habits and how beneficial exercise is. And
Mhm.
so we don't have to go too far into there, but
Mhm.
there's just an insane amount of research when it comes to just any kind of exercise and how beneficial that is to you and your outcomes and living well into old age.
Mhm.
And but yeah, going back to the food. So if you're looking at the food and the consumption of water and other liquids, to me that's what, when we first started on our health journey, it was kind of like, hey, we need you to serious about this. Hey, we're putting this in our body every single day, sometimes several times a day. We're eating out this much. Is this stuff good for us? Is it nurturing us? And a lot of the stuff we were eating at the time wasn't doing very good for our health. And
Yeah.
so
It's
yeah,
pretty simple, right? We just followed the food pyramid,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Eat the most bread and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I've seen a lot of people just talk about it. It needs to be flipped on its head. Like, you shouldn't hardly eat much bread. If you're eating bread, ensure you eat sourdough bread and
Yeah.
or just a very high quality bread like the brand Ezekiel,
Yeah.
if you're eating bread at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I just want to give an example real quick of, I wrote it down here because I was just looking at, where's that here? I was looking at, I think, food ingredient list and how they've changed. So I was looking at Dorito. I just picked a random thing we used to eat when we were kids in our early 20s. Doritos. When the Doritos first came out, 3 ingredients: whole corn, vegetable oil, and salt. That was it. 3
Really?
ingredients. That was the original Dorito. And
Do you know what
I think
year that was?
the early 1960s,
Okay.
I think it was. And then guess how many ingredients are in a Dorito now? The basic version.
16.
33 ingredients. And
Mm.
I may have undercounted one of them because they kind of combine several ingredients in
Mhm.
one thing that they mention.
So
But
10x.
yeah, it's insane. And just hearing that, but then you look at what's in it. It's corn, vegetable oil, and then the sunflower, canola, and corn oil is the vegetable oil mix. Maltodextrin. Then you got salt, cheddar cheese, whey, monosodium glutamate, buttermilk, Romano cheese, Romano cheese had twice on there for some reason. Whey protein concentrate, onion powder, corn flour, natural and artificial flavor, dextrose, tomato powder, lactose, spices, artificial flavors, yellow 6, yellow 5, red 40, lactic acid, citric acid, sugar, garlic powder, skim milk, red and green bell pepper powder, disodium inosinate, disodium guanylate, potassium chloride, and sodium caseinate. It's such a mouthful.
Yeah,
It's insane.
that is a mouthful. That is insane, especially going from 3 to 33 in that
And
many years. And the funny thing is, you can go to the grocery right now, like the tortilla chips that I buy, which is basically Dorito, have 3 ingredients. The ones I buy are organic, corn, avocado, organic avocado oil, and salt. Sea salt specifically.
And then, that's in a lot of, you look at most processed foods are anything that's not like a whole food you grow out of the ground. A lot of times it's going to be filled. You look at the label. That's one thing we learned quickly. Let's read the labels, what's in the food. If you can't pronounce it, or it's like a super long list that it takes you a while to read it, like it did me, then that's probably not the best thing. Try and find another option on the shelf. If you really need that snack, find something else on the shelf that's a little bit less ingredient list, and then kind of work down from there. But I looked up, if you can think of like the fast food place, probably the most healthiest one you could think of is probably what, Chick-fil-A, right? You think of like the healthy fast food.
Yeah, or Chipotle or something.
Yeah. I looked up Chick-fil-A sandwich, 55 ingredients in a
And a
Chick-fil-A
sandwich.
sandwich.
Insane. I've
And you look it up, it's absolute bananas of it's got corn syrup in the pickles,
mm,
corn syrup in the sauce. The breading has all kinds of uh, preservatives and stuff on the chicken, and really odd MSGs in the chicken breading, and it's in
mm,
one other part of it.
mhm.
The bread itself, and going back to bread, we were talking, is the bread itself had probably half those ingredients.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
what I
just
was gonna say.
bananas.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, if you're still eating fast food, just pull off the bread and or bring your
Hmm.
own bread if you know what I
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
mean.
yeah,
But or just pull off the bread
yeah.
and eat the hamburger
Eat the
itself.
meat. Yeah, eat
Eat
the
the
meat.
meat. If you really have to, pull off that bread and you can do yourself a ton of favors.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think
That's a good
that's what
point.
we first learned, or one of the first things we learned early on, because they're filled with all the bad seed oils. They're filled with extra sugars, a ton of preservatives, because it's got
Yeah.
to keep shelf life and non-refrigerated. So that I just wanted to share those two things, and you can think of all the other fast food places, and then a lot of it's fried, so they're frying it in these rancid oils, and they're reusing the oils, and it's just like the worst thing you can imagine
Hmm.
eating, and you're eating it a few times a week. That's what we used to do,
Yeah,
or as
yeah.
we were
Growing up.
growing up, and probably early 20s.
Yeah, and when I think about it, so if we think about living well in the old age, um, if you know, setting aside like exercise habits, like you already mentioned, because we talked about those a lot already, and movement, like those are two key factors. Sleeping, um, yeah, that basically includes everything outside of food. So then you go food and water, and you were just talking about it when you were going through all of those things. It's really not what you should eat, it's what you shouldn't eat is
Hmm.
like the first path. And
Mm-hmm.
and so if you can just like eliminate, if you had like a food pyramid of what you shouldn't eat and start eliminating that, you'll slowly start improving health in that regard. And it's like we talked about on the in a previous podcast, where it's like I talked about an analogy to cigarettes, where like one cigarette isn't going to hurt you. You can smoke 365 cigarettes, one a day for an entire year, and you're going to be fine. Nobody would even know. if, you know what I mean, as if they
Hmm.
looked at you. But then if you do it for 60 years straight, that's when it starts to become a problem. And it's the same with our diet as well. It's the same with like the things we eat. And so if we eat McDonald's once a week for 70 years in a row, we eat that same bun or Chick-fil-A, and it's eventually your body's not going to be able to maintain the damage, the inflammation that those are causing. And so then if we had to think about like what not to eat, some of those, and the most general thing you could say is that just eat whole foods, not
Hmm.
the grocery, but literally whole foods.
Hmm.
But obviously, like you and I don't even do that 100% of the time. Like
Hmm.
we have to indulge. We're fucking human.
Hmm.
So, but that can be a strong principle you can abide by. Like, let me just start with whole foods, because then they're not contaminated. I'll use the word contaminated with all of these ingredients that muck it up and make it very satiating, and have long shelf lives, and those types of things. And so
Hmm.
grapes, uh, apples,
Yeah.
nuts, and seeds. But even then, you have to look in the ingredients, and we get fooled all the time. Or you can grab a bag of dried apricots off the shelf, and next thing you know, they got a bunch of ingredients. Or trail mix, you can grab it off the shelf and have 16 ingredients, and it's just like, well, what's in this? And it's a
Hmm.
bunch of added sugars and stuff.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. Just try to get like added, just removing things. Try to, if you don't, if you want to buy something that's not whole foods, then you have to like scan the ingredients list like a hawk, and like excess sugars, and then oils are the two big ones, and the sugars come in 20 different names. You know, you have alternative sugars, you have syrups and other sweeteners, and there's just a bunch additional. So like if you like peanut butter is a great example. So if you get peanut butter, it should just say peanuts and salt, or just peanuts. Like that's the two ingredients it should say, not palm oil and whatever else. And that's a good example where like you can, of course, this stuff is going to be maybe a little bit more expensive, and that's honestly one of the problems. But that's just this is an exercise you have to go through and build a habit over many years, where you have to just constantly look at the ingredients, constantly evaluate, and then constantly upgrade to things that don't have all of those negative things. But let's focus in on oil, for example, because this is a big
Before we go in there,
yeah.
I think what happened as a society is we trusted our government and those, you know, the FDA and all these other agencies to be our vetting buffer, and we trusted them and to like, hey, you're going to protect us by not, you know, allowing these companies to seek better profit by allowing to put this stuff in our food. And then over the last 30, 50 years, or even further, 100 years, it's just a lot of these agencies have become, you know, they've become captured by like a lot of these food agencies, by donations, lobbyists, these agencies. So it's just, you know, a lot of it's not even our fault because we tried to trust it, and then now you're looking at, if you didn't pay attention, now you're looking at the Dorito with 30 extra ingredients in it, and all the other foods are the same. And if you weren't paying attention and making better choices, now you're at this position where you have a couple chronic diseases and you're in pain. And I've seen it a lot of people where just changing your diet can show a huge benefit. And it's not even weight loss, right? Weight loss would be a nice addition, but it's just feeling better. I remember when we first started eating better, just everything from just waking up, feeling better, not feeling groggy, and our bowel movements were better. You're not having diarrhea all the time. You're having like clean poops. And all that stuff's important if you're feeling like crap all the time.
Yeah,
So
fatigue's a huge one. Just being constantly fatigued and not having energy. What's another one? Sex drive, you know, is another one, and which is coupled with energy. So like there's just lack of energy, and basically what has happened is you've created so much inflammation at the cellular level, just constant influx of inflammation, that it's damaged your cellular repair, and it's damaged the way your cells
produce
provide
energy.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about it was about like the regulation. Is like the easiest example is like, I'm sure people have seen it on social media. If you haven't, you could easily find it by looking it up. Is that if you look at even Doritos now, you could look at the same Doritos in Europe or even freaking Canada. Like look at Fruit Loops and what they have in them in United States versus different countries. Some of them have like 3 ingredients. Same with McDonald's. So there's like regulation that hasn't been captured. And so all the 3-letter agencies, the regulatory agency, has been captured. And there's good people. I'm not saying it's all bad. Everyone's bad and no one has good intent, but like there's a lot of corruption and bad money involved. And so
as Americans, we should be pissed off. We should be pissed off that Europe, the same brand of cereal, the same brand of bread, whatever, is missing those harmful ingredients, and they're using they just substitute a different ingredient, but it's a lot healthier for you. It's from a natural food. They're pulling it from a natural food.
And here
for
it's
the coloring.
cheaper and more addictive. Like
Yeah.
cheaper and more addictive. So it plays to factors where you're not gonna feel satiated, which means you're not as full when you eat it, and you're gonna want more. And it's cheaper, so it's you're gonna be drawn to it. Were you about to tell me to go back into the oils
Yeah,
conversation?
I was just thinking because I think seed oils, and a lot of people have the same feeling, but I think seed oils is one of the biggest issues. Seed oils,
It's in every packaged food.
sugar carbs and stuff, overconsumption of that, but more seed oils has been one of the biggest issues that's led to some, not the sole contributor, but it's a major factor in a lot of this chronic disease increase.
It's one of those things that it's like this is one of the things you should remove from your diet. So first of all, we've been using seed oils going back to like indigenous populations, like the Aztecs and Incas would use like seed oils, right? But the process that they were using those oils for, and the way they were doing it is so far removed from how we do it now, where it's just an industrialized process. I actually have a video. Let's see if we can just watch it, of what the process looks like. It's only about 20 seconds. Let me see if I can find the link here. Yeah,
let's do it.
Let's I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. So this is a guy named Gary Brecka who's on a podcast, and hopefully it'll, so I need to share a tab. There we go. Tab. Yep. I'm gonna share audio. All right. Now I'm gonna hit. Let's go ahead and restart that.
You ever go to the grocery store and you see the entire grocery aisle? It's all these like Wesson oils or vegetable oils, but they're all exactly the same color. And I pulled a couple of bottles of these seed oils out.
Can you explain, because you were explaining the other day to us the process.
It's insane. So rapeseed, canola, you put it in a commercial press and it will come out gummy. And so to degum it, you use something called hexane. It's classified as a neurotoxin, same as fluoride. And then you take this degummed oil and you heat it to 405 degrees, which turns it rancid. It's putrefied and it smells. So now you have to deodorize it. So we deodorize it with sodium hydroxide. And then in some cases, we bleach it and bottle it and put it on the shelf. Have you squeezed 10,000 watermelons into watermelon juice and put it all on the shelf?
They would vary a little bit.
They would vary a little bit, but there's no variance there. And so this is a chemically controlled process. It's not back to the polyunsaturated fatty acids per se. It's these pro-inflammatory process that they cause. You ever go to the grocery store and you see the
So yeah, that's the process is to say the least. It's like far removed from when the initial, the original process of like using handmade extraction methods. But cottonseed, he said rapeseed, cottonseed oil,
Canola.
Canola. You have soybean oil,
Corn oil.
Yep. And then those
sunflower is a big one.
Yep, sunflower. Palm oil is another one.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those are basically go through the process we've just
that nasty process. I looked up those clips that it was showing on there of the process. You could look it up, go to YouTube and just search canola oil, how it's made, and this company is kind of bragging about it. Showing how the company's kind of bragging about it.
The Discovery Channel, I think.
Showing the sludge come through, and then you take the sludge, and then because you think of a seed, a tiny little sunflower seed, there's no oil in that thing. You eat the seed, it's drier, and it's very, very dry.
It is,
and then somehow we're getting oil out of it. And that's one of the biggest problems with it, is because you eat a sunflower seed, you're getting a very small amount, but then now we're taking it and then putting it on, drenching it in all of our food, and we're eating it in all of our snacks, and a lot of throughout the 80s and 90s and even today, You look in someone's cabinets and they have canola oil and they're cooking with canola oil, and it's just
Yeah.
absolutely insane. And
Yeah.
we're just eating it. The amounts that we're eating it is just way higher than what we've ever consumed it over the last 50 years.
It's cheaper, and so
Yeah.
if you're in a if you're in if you have a business, you're going to use it for the most part,
Mhm.
right? Because you're already tight on margins, especially like restaurants. You go to any restaurant, you ask them what they're cooking their stuff in, and I've asked some every once in a while. I'll ask, and it's canola and stuff. If you Every once in a while you can go to like an Italian or Greek place and they may do stuff in olive oil, but even then there's some things they still cook in the crappy oils. But so it's cheaper, and let's talk about like why it's bad. So first of all, like we're just gonna go through a bunch of different things that like as you can see, we're not coming on here and saying, hey, you need to be a vegan, or you need to be follow paleo or keto or whatever. It's more of just like, here's what you probably shouldn't eat or have in your diet, because it's just going to cause problems downstream. And then we'll talk about like some of the vital nutrients, the essential nutrients, as they say, that you need, and then you can determine what your diet is. But this is loosely what we've understood over just following practitioners and research and doing our own research over time, and then failing and making mistakes and listening to our bodies as well.
Mhm.
So starting with seed oils, one of the big issues with it is just it's like there's a study we'll put in the show notes, is that one of the biggest problems with it. There's probably other things in your diet that are probably worse than this, but the particular problem with seed oils is that they have the half-life. They have a very long half-life, and so it takes 2 years. There's a study where it takes 2 years to get 50% of it out of your system. So basically, they said that this means that it takes approximately 6 years to replace 95% of linoleic acid, which is a part of it's called LA for short. Linoleic acid is part of the industrial seed oil,
Mhm.
and so it takes 6 years to rid these oils. And
Because
so
you have saturated fats, and then you have unsaturated fat, and then a part of the unsaturated fats, you have the polyunsaturated, which is these linoleic yeah
acid,
yeah
yeah, and says so like small amounts are actually beneficial, but too much leads to harmful like oxidation, and so they call them like oxidized like byproducts
hmm
that then starts disrupting your biology. And so I can't remember what the ratio. Do you remember what the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 like is supposed to be? But there's supposed to be like a ratio. It's either 1 to
yeah
1 or 1.2 to 1 or something like that.
yeah you want it close to, I think, 1 to 1 or something.
And so now like it's been flipped. It's like our ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 is like 1 to 32 or 1 to 62, what we get in our diet. And so like
hmm
if it was one, if we're so people, you'll see you can find evidence for people saying like, oh, it's beneficial. You could probably find studies that, yeah, it is beneficial in small amounts. But what we're talking about is like like we said, everything you're eating, restaurants, your peanut butter, your Doritos, all of it has it in there. So
hmm
now you have an insane amount, and so now it's creating an imbalance. And so what happens is it starts to like these. You have all this linoleic acid that build up, and so that your body basically has an excess of it,
hmm
and then it starts to damage mitochondrial function and metabolic function, increases inflammation, and then and then there's evidence for just raising a host of issues downstream.
hmm
So like obesity, heart disease, cancer, all the chronic diseases that we mentioned. And the problem is just like low grade inflammation of this over time, over a lot of years, causes these issues. And if you look at our consumption, I actually have a graph. Let's see if I can share this
Yeah,
graph.
pull up the
Yeah, let me
graph.
share this graph. This is our consumption of. Let's see. Can you see the graph now?
It's still loading. Yeah.
This is our consumption of a bunch of different. They call them vegetable oils in general here from the 1900s all the way to 2019,
Hmm.
and you can see just a boom. And then there is another graph, and you can see this is one of the studies that was talking about linoleic acid, a narrative view of the effects of increased intake on the standard American diet, associations with chronic disease. There's another one, a good one of graph in here. So Ronnie was just talking about polyunsaturated fat. It's fine in small amounts. But what starts to happen here is it's the bonds start to break once it goes through those oxidation processes and it turns rancid. So you heard Brecca talking about like high heats.
Yeah, like 500 degrees or something. Yeah.
And it also, so it does that in two ways, but it does it like externally in the preparation and the process, but then also internally, once you have an excess, it starts to oxidize and then break down these bonds and then create free radicals, which then then damages the normal cell. And then this is what your cell looks like afterwards. And this is obviously like meant to communicate. It's not like what your cell actually looks like, but
Yeah.
but that's kind of the way this kind of breaks down in your system and works mechanically,
Hmm.
is for this like linoleic acid. And so that's basically the reason why vegetable oils are just not good. And it's hard, like ways to get around it. If you're going out to eat, you can eat steak. You know, that's one way. Like they're not going to cook your steak in canola oil,
Hmm.
hopefully.
Yeah.
And again, what Ronnie mentioned, like you can say remove the bread, or like if you're good in a good quality restaurant, you can sourdough is a good route to go. But like anything potato wise is going to be cooked in, and unless maybe mashed potatoes, but anything fried, and you're at a restaurant or a fast food place, it's layered in this stuff, and and these things are very heat sensitive too. And so like you just saw the process it went through in high heats. Then you're cooking at even more high heats in the restaurant in a
Hmm.
fried container. And so then it just creates just an excess of those free radicals that we talked about. And so yeah, that's seed oils.
Yeah, and then the free radicals cause the oxidative stress and damage to, like our DNA and our proteins and stuff and everything, and throughout our body. But it takes a long time to build up. So if you're eating it for 30 years, you may not notice too much if you're not paying attention to your body and your bowel movements and your energy, and because it is overloading your cell, because we're eating it when you eat it in that little sunflower seed. You eat a bag of sunflower seeds, you're getting very, very minute
Yep.
amounts. But then when you eat it in a half cup of it in your salad dressing or wherever you're eating it in and all your packaged food throughout the day, then it just overwhelms your cells, and then our mitochondria can't produce the energy that it normally can produce. So you may feel a little bit less energized,
Yep.
tired, can't perform as well. And then so if you're looking past that and then you keep eating like that, and then eventually you start to see the chronic disease come, coronary heart disease, obesity, all these different things.
And then you won't correlate that back to that bad habit.
No,
Right.
no.
So you're going to get an autoimmune disease, you're going to get a chronic disease, you're going to get something cardiovascular, and you're not going to like tie it back to that 40 years of eating seed oils. You're going to blame it on something else or genetics or something like that. And that's one of the issues with the delayed effects of these inflammatory things. And that's how they can get away with it, right? That's how we can, saturated fat can have a bad connotation to it for almost 100 years, and still confusing for people.
Hmm. Let me give us some quick history that I found across a few different people, but they essentially talked about in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we didn't really consume too much of these type of seed oils. We're mostly eating butter and lard and tallow, beef tallow, and then it kind of all shifted in the early 1900s to some of these seed oils to all the way in the 2014, the average person was consuming 65 grams of vegetable oils per day, which is an insane amount. I think you said a little bit is we're actually supposed to have a little bit, but I think it's like 1 to 3 grams. We're taking in 65 grams per day. So, essentially what happened is one of the first big ones was Crisco. Crisco was developed in 1911 from Procter and Gamble, and it was made from cottonseed oil at the time. And the Procter and Gamble guys, they were using it for like candles and stuff, but then oil. Then we just started using a different something else like actual oil to make them or something. So they couldn't use it. So they're trying to find out where to use all this like wasted. They actually called it waste. This cottonseed oil byproduct, and they're like, "Oh, let's try to sell this as food," right? And so like Crisco was made in 1911, and then two years later, the former vice president of the American Health Association published a book, and it said "The Story of Crisco," implying that Crisco was heart healthy for you and animal fats were harmful. And this was like one of the first things that threw in like an inkling into, hey, those animal fats that you're eating, the butter, the tallow, that's actually bad for you. The good stuff is this Crisco.
And then American Heart Association?
Yeah, American Heart, the VP guy 2 years later wrote this book, The Story of Crisco.
Okay.
Come to find out, I don't know, they didn't have much proof then, but later in the 40s, Procter and Gamble, the American Heart Association, was struggling. They donated almost $2 million, which is $20 million in today's money, to keep it running. And so that was kind of a big. Procter and Gamble was one of the huge companies, and that's where what we were talking about, where you get these agencies, American Heart Association, FDA, and all these, where they get compromised by money. All these food organizations are trying to make more money, and so that was one of the first things. And then in the 1970s, you're getting like some of the federal guidelines started to get changed, where our government was warning against saturated fat and encouraged these polyunsaturated oils, and then all at that same time in the 70s, farmers were being subsidized for the soy and corn was being subsidized by the government. So the farmers were able to start farming more soy and corn to convert it into these oils. So the food companies all adopted these oils because they're cheap and easy to use in mass production because they're subsidized. And then here you go, that kind of tells the path of where we got into. And there was an even crazier one where the sugar, there's this research foundation called the Sugar Research Foundation that kind of added to this whole thing.
Funny name in general.
Yeah, it's like a lobbyist group. All these companies and have like their lobbyist groups. A lot of times they're secret lobbying groups, and you can't see that they're tied to like a Procter and Gamble or a Coca-Cola. But they paid 3 Harvard nutritionists, and these 3 guys, about 50 grand in today's dollars. It's like 37 grand to conduct this review, and the industry provided articles to include and exclude, review drafts, set the agenda, and it was all minimizing sugar harms and emphasizing the damage that saturated fat would cause. And in 1967, they published all this, in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most prestigious journals, concluding that there was no doubt that only reducing saturated fat and cholesterol is what matters for preventing coronary heart disease. And so you can figure like all this kind of just bad actors and people just seeking out money first took what we should still be eating: beef lard, beef tallow, butter. We need to go back to replacing these seed oils, because like we grew up in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, and everything was about reducing fat.
Yeah.
Right. It was like 2%
Margarine.
milk or skim milk, and then
the butter was Country Crock.
Yeah, Country Crock, but it was
Or can't
canola
believe it's
oil.
not butter.
Yeah, can't believe it's not oil. And it was all it had like 3 or 4 seed oils in it.
Everything
and that stuff's still
said
selling.
reduce fat. I mean, even today, like things still say reduce fat, low fat.
It's still a common thing today. And I think RFK, the leader of the HSS, was getting ready to come out and commend people that saturated fats are okay to eat and not harmful like we've been sold the last 100 years.
Yeah. That's a great synopsis of
about time.
Yeah. It's you hear that same story with many ingredients beyond just many chemicals, many ingredients, beyond just dealing with saturated fat, and you just went across 100 years, dude, and like now, I bet if we Googled it, I bet you'll just run into conflicting evidence right out of the gate.
Oh,
and that's what they do, right? Like there's the concept called merchants of doubt. You put doubt into the system, so somebody like me, like we have a podcast, we're talking about it, we bring it up, so I'm like, oh, let me look at it. Those twins, they don't know what they're talking about, right? And you can go find and validate evidence. Like you can go and validate evidence right now and just keep going down that same path. So one thing I want to talk about is you can find confirmation evidence for everything. And so there's this article on this journal called "Is Everything We Eat Associated with Cancer?" That's the title of it. And so they just picked a cookbook and looked at all the ingredients in this cookbook and found out that like there was associations and for like every ingredient essentially with cancer risks for like most ingredients. And so for example, salt, tea, tomatoes, onions, lemon, egg, corn, coffee, carrots, sugar. Like there's been studies, and so like what they did in that study is just show that like there's many single studies that highlight implausibly large effects, even though the evidence is weak, but then effect sizes shrink or basically go away when you look at like meta-analysis across a bunch of different studies. And it's just a great example of when you get into this nutrition world, there's a lot of like beyond just like the merchants of doubt, there's also just like science is difficult because we're dealing with a complex human being among complex human beings, among like different environments who have adapted in different environments and with different food groups, and we're in different lifestyles, and it's just the complexity is off the charts. And so it's just like very difficult to do nutrition research to where you can just come out and say like, hey, this is the one food you should eat, which is one of the reasons why we were just talking about like the foods you shouldn't eat.
Yeah, because a lot of those, we're all different organisms. We have different genetic makeups that that kind of where certain ingredients affect us in different ways. Our guts are a lot different. Our microbiomes are affecting different nutrients, and we can't absorb a certain nutrient like someone else could, or we absorb a nutrient more by some of these genes that we have, right? But one quote I love by Chris Kresser, he's like, genes load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. And the environment's everything, the food, everything that we put in it. So it's like we maybe have like a predisposition to have something, but that's like doesn't guarantee anything if we eat the right foods and avoid the wrong foods, right? Then
Yep.
that the gun won't be fired.
Yep. Yep. One of the things you had talked about on the last podcast, or one of the other podcasts, was how, for example, like scurvy, like there's a few micronutrients that are essential. They call them essential essential vitamins and minerals that are like essential, like you have to have them in your body, and they aren't like endogenously made. You have to get them like exogenously from food and or soil and whatnot. And vitamin C is one of them, right? Like scurvy was a huge problem until we figured out, oh, there's just like a depletion of vitamin C, and so every single nutrient that's essential, I'll just run through a quick list of them that you like need, has like some association or ailment with it, right? So it's like vitamin C is scurvy, which is like bleeding gums, bruising, poor wound healing, fatigue. And I heard someone recently say that we have like a low level of scurvy in our current population that we don't see. It's not at the excess level, but we don't get enough vitamin C. And so like if you have fatigue, it could be there's low vitamin C, right? Or one of these other ones like vitamin A. There's a few deficiency diseases and symptoms that I can't even pronounce, but like night blindness is one of them. Vitamin D, you get.
Where do you get vitamin A from? Tell them what you get. Where you get
vitamin
that from.
A. Yeah, so vitamin A you can get from mostly fat soluble vitamins, or animal fats is the primary way to get vitamin A. You can get it in some vegetables as well, but your body metabolizes things much differently in a vegetable than animal fats. But the primary way is animal fats.
And one of the other benefits of vitamin A is Sally Morell talks about this, where she says it provides the number one protection against toxic chemicals. So it's wise to increase your intake of vitamin A and also fermented foods, which we talked
biggest
about.
One on immunity. Cod liver oil has one of the biggest sources of vitamin A. If you want to get vitamin A into your diet, cod liver oil is a huge one.
What's the brand we get?
Rosita.
Rosita, yeah.
Yeah.
Most high quality cod liver.
It's kind of expensive, but if you want to prioritize your health, it's the best option out there. Vitamin D, of course, we've talked about vitamin D on here. It's associated with so many ailments you can't even begin to even think straight. But we supplement with vitamin D. We've talked about this before, but 1,000 IUs a day, and so then getting to the next one is vitamin K2. Vitamin K is it works as like you need to pair it. Like there's a lot of interdependencies with these vitamins too, which is another like thing that just gets very complicated. But like vitamin D, A, and K2 all work together. They're all fat soluble vitamins, and get mainly from animal fats. And so you see this story Ronnie just told about like, hey, animal fats are bad, and we take all the animal fats out, and then we're losing these like vital essential nutrients. Then issues happen biologically in chronic disease and metabolic process. Then you have things like
these fats like help our body absorb all these things. That's why they're called like fat soluble vitamins, because the fats, like a lot of these vitamins, they say to take with food, in food that has fat in a saturated fat that can help you absorb them.
Yep. And there's a list, but there's a long list. I'll just rattle off. I won't go into the rest of them, but like vitamin K, vitamin E, bunch of different B vitamins. Some of the most important are like B12 and B6. Like a lot of people are very low on those. Again, like red meat, you you can get your B vitamins. You can get them in algaes and stuff too, but you know the amount you can get. Iron, iodine, zinc. Now we're getting into some minerals: selenium, magnesium, calcium, phosphorus, copper, manganese. Bunch of different like phytonutrients and antioxidants are very key in the metabolic processes, but like omega-3 like EPA and DHA are another important one. But that's just like a laundry list of these are like essential vitamins you need to get them from your food. And so no matter what you're eating, whatever diet you pick, you gotta like align that. So multivitamins important. We talked about multivitamins. We get Chris Kresser's multivitamins, one of the most highest quality ones because he doesn't use synthetic. For example, he uses like an actual form of folate derived from actual natural resources versus folic acid, which is synthetic and has a bunch of harmful effects. And there's a lot of downstream issues with that we haven't talked about, like soil. Our soil is so deprived of nutrients. That like minerals that it becomes absent in our food. And so if you have a carrot that's growing in a soil that's not rich and vital and it's depleted of all its minerals and nutrients, then your carrot's obviously going to be as well. And so like they've done studies specifically with like even carrots, for example, where they've looked at the nutrient profile of a carrot now compared to 40 years ago, and it's like 10x even higher like vitamin A and different vitamins and minerals, and so it has like 10x less nutrition in it, mainly because the soil's so depleted.
And genetically modifying it to taste better and that type of stuff too.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. But
Yeah. So that's just like essential nutrients. The other one is just like nutrient interdependence is one, and then just like there's this concept where like all of these things are like cofactors, and so like you need magnesium and vitamin D, and you need like iron and copper, folate and B12, zinc and vitamin A, right? And so if you're deficient in one of these, it's going to cause downstream issues where like it's not going to metabolize, it's not going to make it to your cells in a correct way, and it's just going to create slow, low-grade inflammation. Similar to if the drastic version is like scurvy or rickets, but just imagine what the low grade is that you can't even consciously perceive. It's just ongoing, and I think like the way to mitigate that is through whole foods and vitamins. And I think going back to the top of the podcast, it's like these are ways you can live well into old age, according to all the research and experts that we follow.
Yeah. There was who was it? Oh, Casey Means was talking about Casey and Callie Means. Casey's the girl. I think she's even took over a role in the government. I can't remember in regards to health, but she was talking about how she was talking down about the feminism movement and how it went wrong, and where it like veered away from women being the provider and making meals for the family, and that was a big thing. It's like, hey, you don't have to do this, but she talked about that's probably one of the most important things as a parent, or just for a family overall, is just providing the healthiest all natural foods for your family, so you don't go out. Because if you go out to a restaurant, that was one of the first things we stopped doing as much, is eating out, even if it's just eating out at a nice restaurant, they're still using all these bad oils and preservatives and the like. So anytime you're eating out and you don't have control over what's going in your food, it's probably not good because they're probably using the cheapest option unless you're paying for a high class restaurant in Chicago somewhere.
Yeah. And we obviously still eat out.
Yeah.
We'll indulge. We're eating pizza. We're not like, you know. Yeah.
I feel like once you get it, and it wasn't all at once either. It was like, hey, we started cutting out the Cheez-Its, and we started cutting out, all these things, and then eventually worked its way through. Because if you're a mother and you have children that are eating all this crap food for so long, it's going to be very difficult to make a sudden switch. But if you all of a sudden take out just all the crappy Cheetos and that type of stuff, and maybe sub in something one time and replace it with a healthier option, you start eating it and talk about how good it is, and then maybe they jump in and start eating it. And then, like, I remember when we first went through this, it made me think of it when you were talking about finding the best, or getting all these nutrients in your diet. And I remember we just went and was like, what's the most nutrient dense foods that you could eat? And
let me guess where you go. Let me guess, like the top 3: liver, mackerel, liver, like some type of fish, like mackerel, and what else would it be? Eggs, maybe.
Yeah, eggs is on the list. Although, like, salmon's a big one.
Okay,
Obviously, not farm salmon, but because then you lose that omega-3, omega-6. You'll have much more omega-6s in the farm stuff because they're feeding it crap, literally crap. They're feeding it its own poop.
Same thing with conventional raised chicken and beef, right? Like, the industrial process, this is a theme now, cheapen the entire, like, the process, so you can have, like, cheaper margins, and so they make more money and the stakeholders make more money. It's like there isn't a lot of malintent. It's just the system is, like, built for incentives to optimize in that way. But we shared a video. I don't have a video of this, but it stuck with me. You're talking about the salmon, one of the top 3, like, and so if a farm raised salmon, they have these farm raised salmon. And so what they'll do is they'll have you can imagine like an assembly line, but it goes vertical, and so you have the salmon down here at the bottom, and this farmed, like, no light getting in or anything. And then right above them, you have, like, chickens, right? And so then maybe above them you have cows or something, right? You have this, like, vertical process. And so the one, they feed the top one with, like, the worst grain, corn, pesticide ridden, horrible quality food. And so, like, the chicken's not getting the nutrients, then it shits, and then right below that, the salmon's eating the shit. That's its food, is the corn or the chicken shit. Chicken shit. And then you're eating that farmed raised salmon, which, yummy.
It's awful. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, you nailed it there, and it was like salmon, berries, blueberries, kale was on there, avocados, right? It's just what's that? Like oysters and mussels.
Yeah.
Those are just packed with, like, a lot of vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin B12, all the healthy fats, the cod liver type of healthy fats, and just provide that. So, because a lot of times, I just did a blood panel and checked all my nutrients and levels, and mine was pretty good. And, like, it's expensive to get a huge panel, so, like, a lot of people can't afford that. So you really have to, if you're not paying attention to what you're eating, or at least taking a multivitamin, if you don't eat a lot of these good healthy foods,
Yep.
that's when you really need to take a multivitamin. Because I was taking a multivitamin for a while, but then I've kind of lowered it to where I'm only taking it once or twice a week, a multivitamin, and because most of my nutrients are at pretty good levels right now, and I'll try and check it every couple years. But I mean, it is still expensive. It's gotten a lot cheaper, but I mean, you're still looking at $300-400 to check the majority of your nutrient profile and levels.
Yeah. We've done it. It's definitely not horrible.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking through that, I was thinking about like eating, like the importance of one of the things you talked about was like the mother and the parent in the home, and it's almost like we've taken the society has taken, through convenience, we've taken the sacredness out of like food. So everything has been like, I say this is like a principle that I try to like abide by, or like convenience kills. If you take that principle, and convenience kills everywhere around, like you do something for convenience, and it's probably going to have a negative outcome somewhere. There's going to be an unintended consequence, and we've done that everywhere. Even like if you take like the complexity of nutrition, and specifically like the nutrients within, say, a blueberry. And so you go to you have a blueberry, and you go to your market, and that blueberry is picked 7 days ago in some faraway land, maybe Mexico, maybe who knows where, California. And so as soon as you pick it from the vine, it starts losing its nutrition profile and starts losing nutrients. And they've done studies on this. So like, even like, you pick some spinach, and it'll lose like 90% of the vitamins by the time it hits your table, and you feed it to your family. And so the whole concept of like local, that's one aspect of why local is important. And so there's a concept called community service agriculture, or a CSA for short, or anyone listening in this, most likely, unless you live in a faraway small town, but even then you could probably find something where you can get local foods. Still, you have to check and make sure it's a positive one. We do Tomato Farm, which is many major cities. You do one, is it Tomato Farm, or is it something else?
Hidden Acres. It's
Okay.
It's actually a farm that kind of does its own CSA.
There you go.
Vegetables,
So
meat, high quality regenerative grass-fed beef, which has a omega-3, omega-6 profile that goes in line with those heart healthy type of.
So there you shorten the distance from like consuming it to your food, and it's better quality. And there's complex factors that we can't even imagine or think about, because this whole process is filled with so much complexity that like even like a local blueberry living in your ecosystem has some type of like blueprint on it, right? It's still connected to like the microbial, like the fungi in the ground, and it's like it's a part of the web of like where you live, right? And a shipped blueberry from like Mexico, it's just like not tied to your environment. So there's just like this complexity that we can't even imagine from eating local. It's like the best way to eat local is like to start a garden in your backyard, and then when you pick your tomato, you can go in and eat it instantly, or your Swiss chard or whatever it is. We started doing that recently, but obviously you can't get everything from your garden. But that's one thing I wanted to mention, is just around like garden and local foods, and the importance of that on the nutrition is huge. And then of course, like I talked about soil, and it's like your backyard soil is not going to be as depleted as some industrial farm that's layering pesticides and herbicides and really destroying the soil. Speaking of herbicides and pesticides, one of the biggest things that like you can avoid that tied to bread is the process of like wheat, the process of like how we grow wheat, and then our pesticide and herbicide use is like the biggest thing that's like stuck in my brain in that process. Is not only do we spray it on the crop as it grows, but at the end of the season, because the wheat needs to be dried out, we use it as, I think it's called a desiccant, to dry it out before harvest. And so then we spray it. Hey, we already have this, sprayer over here. We might as well just spray it and use the same things. So I don't have to add another piece of the process and add other ingredients. So we'll just spray it on this wheat so it dries it out. And now, so that's another layer at the end of the harvest. And so like you want to avoid inorganic wheat at all costs. Otherwise it's layered with pesticides, which are going to damage your gut. We talked about in the last podcast. And like the problem is like a lot of this, what we talked about this whole time, goes out the window if you have a damaged gut. Everything changes. You have a leaky gut, then like vitamin D could be bad. Like there's a ton of shit that can be bad. Like grapes could be bad. It changes everything.
A lot of plants are bad because they have the phytonutrients that like help you, but it's in that instance it's not helping you. It's causing damage because it's leaking in. You have a leaky gut and it's leaking into your bloodstream and causing all kinds of issues and your body's attacking it. No, that's a good point.
Like one size fits all, like things don't work, especially if like you mentioned at the top of the podcast, like if 70% of people have at least a chronic disease, then they're going to react much differently.
One of the big things that we didn't talk about is like processed meat, and I remember that was one of the huge things that damn near made us become vegan. I think we were 95% vegan for a couple years at one point, and it was because of all the research that's out there on processed meat. So not only there is several studies, like the World Cancer Research Fund, they completed a large review that showed like over 7,000 studies that a major link between diet and cancer, and the bottom line was processed meats are too dangerous for human consumption, is what they came out and said. And then they got kind of some backlash, and they made them say something else besides too dangerous, which was hilarious. I saw.
But hilarious.
Then like several studies that showed processed meats increase the risk of pancreatic cancer by 67% and heart disease by 41%. And another study revealed that 1/4 cup of processed meat consumed, which is a tiny amount daily, increases colon cancer by like 25%, somewhere 21%. And so like processed meats, and then to go even further, they're filled with antibiotics. They're filled with they're giving them insane amount of vaccines and all different. And then they're feeding them the worst. A lot of you've seen the way. I don't know. I'm getting up. Are you hearing that? Testing 1 2. Oh, so a lot of the way they're feeding these animals, so they're feeding them all that same wheat and germ that you're talking about, the corn, it's sprayed glyphosate right off the farm. They're feeding it to the cows. Now the cow's eating this and that, and then they're just filling themselves up with all this, So then that's the chicken and beef that we're mostly eating through this processed meat and throughout our hot dogs, all this, anything you're getting from the grocery store is probably not great meat, and that's really what causes most people to. And then just the way the animals are treated, you see all those videos, and tiny little, they're injecting them with these like human growth hormone, that are making them bigger and stronger, and then they're putting them in these little cages, and it's just sick. There is some research, even the way the animal's treated and how much stress it goes through, and the way that's affected through the meat as well too. So there's just an insane
100%.
amount. So that's why it's very important to eat local meat. And if you can order, me and you still do order some. Gabe Brown, famous Virginia farmer from South Dakota, he'll ship you a box of meat right to your door.
Probably highest quality meat on the planet.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say it.
Yeah.
Some of I'm looking at my list, and I know we're coming up on time, but there's a few things I wanted to mention. Like one, like top folks we go to for like nutrition that you can trust, that we've trusted over time. Chris Masterjohn, Rhonda Patrick, Chris Kresser, the Weston A. Price Foundation in general. I haven't talked about Weston A. Price, but Weston A. Price was a famous dentist who traveled around the world in the 30s or somewhere around that time. He has a famous book I have where it just shows how like one of the key pieces he was a dentist, and so like jaw lines and nasal passages, and there were so many health issues that came with this, and he boiled it all down to fat soluble vitamins like we were talking about, vitamin A, K2, D, and the native foods they would eat that. So they'd be eating like the Eskimos, they'd be eating like seals. That was like their primary native food, and then they brought in all these processed foods with long shelf lives, and all of a sudden they started getting a bunch of ailments and a bunch of chronic diseases, and even basic stuff like asthma and chronic rhinitis and all of these like facial things. And you look like, even you and I, like you look at our noses right there, like they're pretty pinched, right? Like our airways, and like you and I have had nose issues. You look at you get his book, you can even just Google this Weston A. Price Foundation comparison. What he would do is he'd take pictures of, he wouldn't even have, it was a crazy study, like you have this tribe right here who hasn't been exposed to the Western diets and then industrialization, and then he would go right across the street to the other one who has, and you would look at their faces, and this, like their nose, their facial structure, their teeth, because their facial structure was built correctly, because like vitamin A is one key ingredient, like this, for like in utero, to properly build your bone structure. One of the reasons why we have like a bunch of issues with birth is because like hip structure, and so when women are in utero and you're not getting the strong ingredients, you're basically setting them on a bad trajectory, and so then you can't properly have a baby.
Which a lot of C-sections now because of that. I think like 40-50% C-sections in hospitals now, and that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
All so
you look a lot of kids. Yeah, I mean, our faces aren't, but kids nowadays pinch nose like almost a V. It's supposed to be like
really
a
tight, weak chin.
Yeah, very weak chins, and it's just you're not getting that nutrition. Then you need braces and all these other different ailments that come with not developing a strong.
Start overlapping and stuff. That's all great signals for malnutrition, and those are the tiny things we don't think about, like nutrition. Where who else? Dr. Mark Hyman, Thomas Cowan. There's a few other ones we follow in the past.
But, even like vegan's a big fad that over the last 10-20 years, but seen where putting kids on a vegan diet early on, and that's just, you can't substitute the protein and fat that you're going to get in a meat diet, and there's many studies that show the difference between like that malnutrition that kid's getting because he or she's not getting it in animal fats or wherever, and height, bone structure, all the same way, and it's an incredible difference, like several inches, 2-3 inches height you can be affected, or even more.
We haven't talked about proteins, but like protein is a key like enzyme for metabolic process, and it's essential, and amino acids are essential to substrates of building those enzymes, those proteins, right? And so you need those things. I'm glad you mentioned that. You mentioned vegan, and it's like another thing you could do is you could go and find and validate like a vegan diet, right? Like we were in the same boat. Like we basically went down that path, and eventually made it to where we are now. But the reason it works is because like if you're on a certain amount of like a bad diet for a certain amount of time, like a standard American diet, and then you go vegan, then it's going to have great effects, and you may live very vitally for a long time. But then longevity, if you don't have enough B12, there's a lot of studies to show the depleted vitamin B12 in a vegan diet over time, you're going to have mental health issues long term. And because it's an essential nutrient. Like you can't have the metabolism and the methylation of your neurotransmitters without B12, right? It's a cofactor in all of these processes. So Dr. Pompa goes by this concept he calls feast famine. And so there's this like, hey, should I do this diet? Should I do that? His whole concept is like diet variation. Diet variation is like rooted in the life of our ancestors. And so they regularly went through like periods of feast. They'd get a hunt, and then in between one hunt and the next, they would go through like fasting periods. And so what that did is like it allowed our hormones to like optimize, our body to heal, and you would get weight loss and so many more things. And that's what happens, I think, with like a carnivore diet where it's all meat, or vegan diet where it's like what you've done is you've been in balance most of your life, and then you've reset. And so you're going to feel good for 2 to 5, maybe 10 years, but then over time, you're going to go back into that imbalance. And so the best way is to rotate. Do a vegan diet for 6 months, flip to a carnivore. That's and so that's
even
kind
a
of
few
what he
weeks, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're try it out and see what it feels on your body. But it's just like we just start seeing imbalances, and they just cause deficiencies over time. The one last thing I want to talk about is blue zones.
Oh yeah.
So
Go for it. Talk about it.
Blue zone is a guy, I can't remember his name, who did a bunch of research on like, he went and found out where the people who live the longest live. And so we're talking about living well into old age. And what he wanted to do is just create like, why do they live to an old age? And then take all of the principles he learned from that, and it's like, hey, this is what you should do if you want to live into old age. And so Japan's one example that the long boasted people, you hear Japan has some of the world's like oldest people, and they look at it as, oh, they have a superior diet, their lifestyle, yada
Coastal.
yada. Yeah. But when they looked into it, as actually, before that, I'll start with, so Japan was one of the areas. There was one in California. There was some, like a few in South America, one in Italy, like Sardinia, Italy. But there's a few areas that were kind of, and they would talk about, some mainly a vegetarian diet with maybe a little bit of meat. These people like relaxed a bunch. Movement's still good. Not saying it's not good. Alcohol, and they just found these alcohol once a day, like a glass of wine, right? And then everybody like followed this.
Beans.
Beans
Was in every blue zone.
Beans is huge. You can find cookbooks. People change their life. You and I changed our diets off of this. What they've come to figure out is like all of these areas in the blue zones. So Japan, longest living people. The police started looking into these people, and there's this guy. There was this guy who was supposed to be 111 years old. They went to find him right at his house, and they found him mummified in his bed, and he had been there mummified for 3 decades. So 3 decades. So his daughter, who's 81, hid his death to continue collecting monthly pension payments. And that, so then Japan did it, like their Ministry of Justice in 2010 put out a memo noting that there were 234,000 people age 100 and older whose addresses were not recorded, right? This isn't just a problem in Japan. This is a problem in the United States. So the problem is like a lot of these old people predated birth certificates. So like an official age where you could see it. And so you could fake the age, and then you would collect pension. And that's basically, it's pension fraud across all of these blue zones. Another one is in the United States, the same thing. Between 1841 and 1919, states started introducing birth certificates. And then what they did is they found out that like the Dr. Newman, he found that after they introduced birth certificates, it resulted in a 69% drop in the prevalence of supercentenarians, which are people 110 years old or more. And so like the percentage dropped by 70% because people are collecting pension payments, which is insane. I'm just imagining in my head just like a bunch of mummies all over Japan and all over these areas that are just claiming people are old. And so like this, I think the moral of the story is that be skeptical of what you hear in this world of nutrition
Mm-hmm.
and even of us. And unfortunately, you have to do a lot of your own research, or you find people like doctors that you've found over time, like some of the ones we mentioned, that they're like, they admit when they're wrong, they share evidence, deep evidence, they understand how to evaluate scientific research, so you don't have to go into PubMed and look at the data.
Mm-hmm.
But even nowadays, right, like you can pump in a PubMed article into AI and say like, hey, if I like odds ratios and statistical significance, you can like explain this to me like I'm 5, and they'll explain it to you, right? And so we have better access now than we have ever had before. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just want to share that blue zones and
Yeah, for a lot of
being
while, like Chris Kresser was one you mentioned. A lot of times we would just search seed oils, Chris Kresser, coronary heart disease, Chris Kresser, or is this food bad, or is this what's this new study on coconut oil? Is coconut oil bad for you? Chris Kresser, and he breaks down all the studies, shows the good and the bad, both sides
Yep.
of the thing. So it's like you
Tina
find,
still does that.
you find
Tina
something
still
like
does it.
that. I think I wanted to end on just like some to-dos and or like just examples of like, because this stuff's hard if you're trying to like revamp your entire diet. It's like, I'll be like, oh, I got a family, I work, we need to make stuff quick and blah blah blah. Like food prep is huge for lunches and even dinners. A lot of times when I'm making dinners, I usually make more so we can eat leftovers. And then like food prep, quinoa, you get organic quinoa. You can buy like big bags of it on Amazon. And then a pressure cooker. I have a pressure cooker, put the quinoa in there. Then I'm just cooking up some vegetables, either in the pressure cooker or on the stove. Cook those up. Put some like some onions and some garlic and then so I got that. Bam. Sometimes and then I'll have that for like 3 maybe meals, lunches, and either if I'm at home, crack an egg in it, or if I go to work, I'll have a can of mackerel, or you could cook up some salmon ahead of time. And
Boiled eggs, hard-boiled eggs
yeah,
is a good one.
hard-boiled eggs. Avocado was one of the most nutrient-dense items as well. Avocado put in there. So like
Jerky.
yeah, jerky. There's some really good jerky brands out there from 100% grass-fed, grass-finished. So like just finding out easier ways to make this healthy food and and
Don't say you're not going to snack. Just buy healthier snacks.
yeah, like
Yeah.
yogurt,
So like
yogurt and fruit. Me and you,
my
it's good
go-to is peanut butter.
Yeah.
Peanut butter and yogurt and fruit. Yeah.
peanut butter apple, peanut butter banana.
Yeah.
My snacks, dark chocolate. I'll eat here and there.
Yeah.
Just the high percentage dark chocolate's a good snack, and I usually just eat it right after my meal, because you're always going to want a snack. So
Exactly.
you eat it right after your meal. So yeah,
Yeah.
eliminate seed oils and bread. If you take anything, just read the food labels and eliminate as much seed oils and bread as you possibly can, unless you're getting some homemade sourdough stuff somewhere.
Organic sourdough. If you're getting organic sourdough, then by all means.
Eat out less, make your own food. Yeah, let us know Journey or any questions, and love to help or share what we've learned or failed in over the years.
Let's hope we all don't get hit by a van or a bus, and we all live well into old age.
Yeah. I think it's a good way to end it.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate it.